You mentioned earlier on in this conversation that you think that there's a floor, that you have to get to that floor for something to even be considered a hit kind of thing. And I'm curious, a producer starting off, if they're just starting, where they're going. What are some things, you could say to help get to that floor? What are some things that you notice in songs that end up becoming hits that you think that makes them the floor?
So it's different for different parts of the process. For producers, I think the floor is you have to know how to produce a good vocal. Like that's a non-negotiable. If the track is amazing and the vocal is not like top notch, it doesn't matter. Like you have to know how to make a vocal sound great. And part of that is being able to work with singers to coach them, to give the best takes of their life. The other part is just being a really good editor. So much of it comes down to that. Like even if you're not using autotune and Melodyne, like editing is still a huge part of those Billie Eilish records.
Vocal editing or production editing in general?
Vocal editing, but all of the above. Yeah, all of the above. So you got to be able to do a good vocal. And ultimately you have to, you don't necessarily have to know how to play instruments, but you have to have a musical mind. Like you have to help people interpret something that they may think that they may not even know how to describe what they're looking for, but it's your job to sit down on a keyboard or on a piano or on your DAW and figure out how to get that sound that's in their head onto the speakers. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of a non-negotiable. But then it's just as far as quality goes, you kind of just know it when you hear it. It's like there's something that makes something feel like a demo, and there's something that makes things feel finished. And I always tell people, like, don't ever treat anything like it's a demo. Treat everything like it's a master. Treat it like this is going to be the thing that goes out on the radio. And I think that's where a lot of producers skimp out and they do themselves a disservice. Mm-hmm. So spend the time. I think that there's levels of that with production. I think if you're a songwriter, you've got to know the rules of what works and what doesn't work. Like for whatever genre, whatever lane you're trying to write for.
Can you give a couple examples of those?
Yeah, like if you're setting out to write for, well, let's just speak to
let's say pop. I think
pop. Yeah,
pop.
Yeah, exactly. Which
singer-songwriter pop probably.
Yeah, you gotta know what's working. Like who else is out there in that genre? Like Ed Sheeran. Like become an encyclopedia of his work. Look at Ryan Tedder. Look at the greats. Look at people who are doing amazing stuff in that genre, and then pay attention. Like, what do they do musically? What do they do chord progression wise? What kind of songs are they writing? Are they writing like what are they doing with rhyme scheme? What are they doing with like how are their songs mixed? How do they sound? Where does the vocal sit in the mix? What is the like who are they singing to? What are they singing about? Like you just got to know all those things inside and out and almost just be like an encyclopedia of the genre you're trying to write for. So that gives you at least a, like I would call it a floor of like, it has to be as good as all of those things that you're comparing yourself to.
Sure. Absolutely. And I think that it's very interesting, talking about Ed Sheeran and some of the great songwriters, how, for example, Taylor Swift is one of the great songwriters, I think, of our she's notable, and she's created a songwriting, like these great songwriters, I think they also create their songwriting style. Like you can tell when a song's written by Ed Sheeran, you can tell when a song is written by Taylor Swift. They have their sound. And it's interesting, I talk about all the time, I do these like breakdowns of music on my channel where I talk about people's music and stuff and what's popular at the time. And it always amazes me, Taylor Swift's writing, because it breaks what I would think is a typical writing pattern, in the sense of like, I wouldn't use perfect rhyme. I don't. They tell you not to use perfect rhymes. He's like,
but you know what? I have this theory that it's an 80-20 rule. It's an 80-20 rule. 80% of what they're doing doesn't break any rules, but then 20% of it does. Mm-hmm. So maybe if she's breaking her rhyme scheme, like you said, the chords are probably not breaking any rules.
That's true.
Or the track is probably not breaking any rules, or the arrangement's probably not breaking any rules. Like, you can't do too much. Like if you do so much that's different, that's when it starts to get kind of indie alternative. It's not going to be in the top.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's I like to look at it as that.
Yeah, pick which rules you want to break.
And you got to
which direction you want to go. Absolutely.
But you hit on a key there too. You got to know the rules before you can even pick ones to break in the first place.
Preach, man. Absolutely.